Hey guys, welcome back to the Ready Room. Today we're going to take a look at the gun. I've got some old T-45 gun footage, a little bit of F-18 gun footage. One of the best parts about being a fighter pilot, in my opinion, is getting the opportunity to shoot the gun. So enjoy. So my first experience with any kind of aerial gunnery or air-to-ground type gunnery came in the T-45. Back in 2003, I was actually in the last, what we called the gun class. So phase 2 of T-45s, which would be the Air Force equivalent of IFF, they had a gun syllabus. And they would take a T-45 with an instructor and they would attach a tow banner to it, fly it out over, in our case, the Gulf there, because I was at Kingsville. I was based in Kingsville. And I think there would be four or five in the pattern, in the gun pattern. And we would do it out over the water, practice shooting the banner. Now, the T-45 didn't actually have a gun, but it had this symbology in the HUD. I flew the T-45A model, so the HUD was pretty, definitely wasn't an F-18 HUD or a modern HUD, but it did have a gun reticle in it. We didn't do any kind of shot validation. It was more of a scan situational awareness type exercise. It was definitely a high threat part of the syllabus. There were a lot of parts of that entire flight where you could get behind the power curve and essentially find yourself getting it down. So I know it was a high stress time for me. I specifically remembered the amount of dual flights we got before we went solo, and I think it was like 3 dual flights. The first flight I went, I had no clue what was going on. The second flight, I remember taking off and landing. The third flight, I was like, I pretty much think I got it, and the IP signed me off for solo, and literally on my solo, it kind of all came together. So they had that learning curve pretty doped out for an average guy like myself. But we would go out over the Gulf, and we would get ourselves established in the gun pattern, and I don't remember the specifics of it, but it was very instrument flying intensive. I remember literally just flying instruments until it was time for me to roll off the perch. I'd take a peek outside, make sure I wasn't cutting anybody off, and I would start looking for the banner. So the HUD footage I have, it's old. Even at the time, the cameras were old in the T-45, but it's kind of hard to see the banner. But we were able to practice strafing. And I guess back in the old days, the old days, the sim instructors told me that they used to actually, in A4s, they would actually do real bullets. I don't know if they were yanking my chain or what, but they would tell me, yeah, the tow tractor would come back with some bullet holes in the tail. Student would get it down. So they went the safer route in the T-45, no bullets, just symbology. The F-18 was the first airplane that I got to that had an internal gun. They mounted it up front, basically right between your legs. It's a 6-barrel rotary cannon. It uses hydraulics, electricity, and bleed air to operate. It shoots 100 rounds a second. In the air-to-ground mode, we could select the fire rate. We had a low fire rate, I think of 4,000 rounds per minute, and a high fire rate of 6,000 rounds per minute. In air-to-air, it was the full 6,000 rounds a minute. Carried about 570 rounds, so you only had about 5.5, 6 seconds of ammo. So when we were learning how to use the gun, air-to-air or air-to-ground, trigger discipline was always a big deal, especially in air-to-air, because it's actually really hard to gun somebody that doesn't want to be gunned. Now in the movie Top Gun Maverick, they're flying Super Hornets. I also flew the Super Hornet. It also uses a version of the M61. Now, I don't know the exact differences of how the gun is built. If you happen to work on the gun, just put in the comments below. But I was told by the guys in my squadron that worked on the gun that it actually has some plastic components in it, and it actually is slightly different. But nonetheless, 6-barrel Gatling gun. I know the Super Hornet carries less rounds than the A through D. As far as employing it, they were identical. One of the coolest features about the gun in the Hornet is that it used the radar. So with a radar lock, you would get closure, you would get ranging, and really all you had to do was walk the pipper onto the target. Much easier said than done. Without a radar lock, you would get basically a funnel in the HUD, and without getting too nerdy, you would drag the target through the funnel, get on the trigger at the appropriate time, and you could still validate your shot without a radar lock, but it wasn't as accurate. In air-to-ground mode, you could also get radar ranging with the gun. So under the pipper, you would know the range to target. So as you're in your attack dive, you knew when to come on the trigger. Having rounds in the gun meant you always had an air-to-air or an air-to-ground weapon. Really important as a fighter pilot. I always loved shooting the gun, never got to shoot it enough. Here's a compilation of when I was shooting it with the Royal Malaysian Air Force. This is actually a full belt that we went through. I just cut and spliced it so you kind of see how long it would take to go through a full belt. It's not very long. Well, there you have it. Air-to-air and air-to-ground gunnery and fighters. So I never got to shoot the gun enough. I've always been envious of A-10 guys because their gun was bigger than mine. And if it doesn't have an internal gun, I'm not really sure it's a real fighter. So we'll see you next time.